basically everything that's happened recently, from the war, the Death Star, me getting arrested, my new island, and me coming back from my 3 years of silence in the first place, is somehow because of Durlan. Hey guys, welcome back to Nations of Minecraft, and today I'm actually recording from Durlawn, and I thought it would be better if I had an actual Durlawn citizen recording with me. So here's X Esquire.
Hello. Oh,
Okay, yeah, and he just fell from the sky. So yeah, I'm in Durlawn right now, I'm in the capital, Riverville. There's a huge farm here, and we'll talk more about that since farms are a very important part of Durlawn's identity. So before we
yeah.
get started, what do you like about being a Durlawn citizen?
I've always just liked farming. The animals are always super nice, especially this guy. He doesn't live in a pen. He kind of just he wanders around. He just greets people, you know. He's kind of like if anyone uh just visits Duralon, he's definitely the first one to say hello.
Nice.
So he's definitely cool. And he doesn't actually have a name. I'm thinking of naming him Ben, but I
Okay.
mean, yeah, but there's so many cool buildings here. All of the architectures a lot different than you will see in the other world because there's so many different types of builders in Durlan, so all of the buildings are like different. You can kind of tell who built what, uh,
Yeah.
or at least like what buildings were made by the same people,
And some of the most
and what.
impressive buildings are this map that you saw in the beginning. X Esquire made not just one of these maps, but one of these maps in every major city. How long did that take?
It took, I think, about a week. It was painful to do this.
Yeah, and before we go to the map, I want to show you guys. Durlan has this metro. Uh,
I loved making this. This was so much fun to make. It took almost as long as the maps, but it's so fun.
I know, and there's like a map of this whole metro. So yet no other country is as developed as Durlan, as you'll see. There's literally a metro that goes to every major city. And there's also a separate train that goes to another secret part of Durlan that we'll talk about at the end of the video. So first, let's go to the map. Durlan, or the Empire of Durlan, is located right here in the center west of the world, and as you can see, it's smaller in terms of land area than some of these other countries which don't call themselves empires, but in terms of population and development, it's arguably the biggest in the world, maybe even bigger than Iapeta. So Durlan is divided up into 9 states and 4 territories, and these are further divided into a bunch of counties. Now, Durlan is weird because most countries are run by animals, like animals in Minecraft, and Iapeta is only run by players. But Durlan is kind of run by both players and animals. Of course, the highest imperial officers are all players, the emperor or empress is always a player, but some of these counties are run by animals. So, these are what the states are called, and now I'm going to give a brief overview of each of them. So, Durlan is the capital state. The whole thing is just the capital city, and it has the biggest farm in the world. And the whole country of Durlan, as we said, is based around farming, but Durlan, the state, does the most farming out of all of them, even though Rajlin might argue with that. Next, Navaliv is more suburban. A lot of players actually have houses there, and the current Empress Funoa actually grew up here. And they don't do as much farming here. They mostly make tools and stuff and crafts for the farmers in the state of Durlan. Next, Montane City is a state that was recently conquered back from Iapeta. They recently built a very cool bee farm with a lot of flowers and stuff, and the city of Montane City is situated on this mountain. And it also contains a seed factory where they genetically engineer new crops to plant. This is the seed factory. So, yeah, the next state is North Mountains, and this is the military state since they border Iapeta. They have a lot of military. This is the site from which they invaded this part to take back Montane City. And they also have half of the space station. And the state that has the other half is the next one, which is Supris. And the state of Suprece is known for having like the smartest people. It was Supretians that built the space station, and yeah, this is kind of like the science-y state. They're always inventing new stuff, even though they don't build that much. Next is Kasamina, which is like the business state. Since they're right on the ocean, uh, Kasamina has one of the most important trading cities, which is the city of Kasamina, right on this peninsula. And yeah, it's a very important port city, and they don't do as much farming here, but they bring crops to the coast and sell it to other countries. Next is Harcraf, which is kind of like it's a very small state. It's kind of like where the hipsters live, and they kind of plant the seeds that are genetically engineered in Montane City, and they have some of the coolest landforms, which we'll talk about later. Next, Rajlin. They grow all the wheat. Duralawn grows a lot of wheat too, but not as much as Rajlin. And they've always kind of been rivals with the state of Duralawn. And again, we'll talk more about that later in the ethnicity segment. So yeah, they have some really cool wheat farms all over the state. And the last state is Bristow, which it's the sheep, sort of like the sheep shearing state. And I'm not sure why I didn't include a picture of the sheep. But yeah, I thought this city looked cool. And yeah, they also still have some wheat farms, because why not? Okay, those are all the states. Now let's go on to the territories. So these are the territories. This one doesn't have a name yet, and this one also doesn't have a name because Durlan claims this territory, but doesn't actually occupy it because they're currently fighting with Iapeta over this. So yeah, I'm just going to show one picture of the space between the Estherland territory and the jungle territory. Looks like this. It's really pretty, but there aren't a lot of people who live there. And this territory doesn't have a name, but it's got some cool structures, and it's also where they're hosting the Olympics. Since this is kind of, it's not neutral territory between Duralawn and Iapeta, but it kind of is. It's like they have a ceasefire there, so Iapetans can go there sometimes. It's weird. And yeah, this territory is ground zero for the war between Duralawn and Iapeta. So it's like they're fighting here, but they have peace here. It's kind of weird. And yeah, those are the states and territories. So now this is a biome map of Durlan. And these biomes are very interesting since they used to be from the mods, from the Biomes O' Plenty mod. And the mods were eventually removed, but the structures from the mods still remain. So I'm going to include pictures of these biomes from back when we still had the mods, so you can see what they're really supposed to look like. So this is a fertility map of the whole world. And you can see Durlan is the most fertile part. Of course, greener means more fertile. They're blessed by being between these two fertile rivers, the Durlan River and the Victory River. And yeah, so Durlan's whole history has been centered around how good they are at farming because of their amazing land. And let's look at some of that land. So yeah, there's a close-up. And yeah, this biome, which is in the Suprece and Navalav area, is a poison forest. Now you'd think, hey, that's not very fertile. Actually, it is, as long as you don't go in the poison. This is very good for getting like reeds and other types of wood that are very useful to make farming tools. So this isn't where most of the farming happens, but they trade with the farming areas because they have other good resources. And this biome is where all the farming happens. They have these lush yellowish green fields. These biomes over here, some of the most fertile places in the world. And this is where Harcraf is, and you have these like enchanted tropical mountains. They're like the blue-green hills and stuff. And this is a pine forest that exists here. Again, not as much farming here, but it still looks pretty awesome. Over here, this is the least fertile part. This is the mountains, where there used to be leopards. More about them later. I know, I'm sorry, I keep making you wait for stuff. And there's a cherry forest right here in the neutral territory. And they also have a maple forest to the west of Riverville. And yeah, these are just the names of all the biomes. I didn't show you pictures of all of them. I showed you pictures of the most interesting ones. So yeah, this has had an important impact on their history. Now, traditionally, back before the Duralawn Empire, when there were native tribes that inhabited this place, each area would sort of grow a different kind of thing, back when there were more things that you could grow, when we had the mods. So the Duralawn tribe grew a lot of fancy fruits. So you see there are turkeys here. There used to be turkeys. They grew like corn and other stuff along the Duralawn River, and they grew things like raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, pineapples, cantaloupes, peanuts, and cashews. So yeah, they grew a lot of fruits. Cashews are indeed fruits, yes. And they also made really cool desserts like donuts and many different flavors of cake. This tribe, the Rajlan tribe, just grew many different types of grain. Now they only grow wheat, but they used to grow all these grains like barley and oats and stuff. The Rathurba tribe would grow like a lot of veggies, like spices and vegetables, like broccoli, avocado, and zucchini that they would get from further south here. And the most interesting thing is Harcraf, because they're trying to recreate what they used to have. They used to have fruit trees that would have things like apricots, grapefruits, oranges, peaches, coconut, papaya, pears, lemons, figs, dragon fruits, mangoes, star fruits, pomegranates, cherries, and bananas. Wow. And they would take all these fruits and make juices, soda, jelly, and smoothies out of all of them. Yes. And even though they can't really do that now after the mods have been removed, yeah, this is what it looked like when we still have the mods. Now we have shaders, but we don't have mods. They're still trying to recreate that. So what they've done is, remember we talked about genetically engineering seeds. They've taken that in their factories and in their farms on their island, and they've remade things like pomegranate juice, apple juice, cranberry juice, and lemonade in regular vanilla Minecraft. So yeah, Durlan kind of has a reputation for challenging the laws of vanilla Minecraft to be more creative. That's one of the things I really like about Durlan. So yeah, they do that all because they have this seed factory where they use anvils and enchantments to sort of modify crops. So yeah, it's really cool. Now here is a population map of Duralawn. There are 5 main cities, and the rest of the population is kind of located near there. There's the capital, Riverville. There's Kasamina, Montane City, Eastfield, and Bristow in order of how populated they are. And Duralawn, in terms of animals, is the most populated country in the world. It's very densely populated. There are some rural areas, but there are also a lot of very populated areas. So yeah, this is a temperature map. Oh, wait. Yeah, this is a temperature map of Duralawn. I used to have like temperature and humidity, but it's a lot easier to visualize and a lot prettier if you just look at temperature. So down here in these territories, it's really hot because there's the jungle, and you can see them. I keep doing that. The warmest areas are over here around where all the crops are, around Riverville. As you go north, it gets cooler. Kasamina is pretty cool because it's on the Wilbur Ocean. And here's the coldest part because it's up in the mountains. And this territory has like a cold part in the mountains and a warm part by the Tridonia River. So yeah, I find this map really cool to look at. So yeah, you can see most of the farming happens in the parts that are warm but not crazy hot. Now this is a language map of Duralawn, and this is where it gets kind of complicated. Because remember, Duralawn is run by both players and animals, and most of the animals in the higher position of Duralawn are of the Durlani ethnicity. So you can see Durlani is the language that used to be spoken by the Duralawn tribe and is now sort of the official language with English in the Empire. So Durlani is spoken in Durlan, some other parts of some other states, and in all the newly conquered land. Next is Rajlan, which is spoken in the east, and there's Supretian, which is spoken in the north. These are the main 3 languages. There's Navalivan, which is only spoken in Navaliv. There's Harcraf, which is spoken in Harcraf, and Donian and Goslin are like minority languages here. I didn't give them a color because they're minorities. Now you can see all these are similar colors. They're all sort of shades of green. That's because these all come from the same language family, the Western language family. But these 2 languages down here each come from different families. This is Unturan, which comes from like the southwestern language family, which they're related to the people down here. And this is Twilight. This is the native jungle language. So these languages all are like cousin languages, but these are completely different. Now, to visualize it differently, I made this separate map. So Durlani is in the orange, and there are all these places where Durlani is like a shared language, where it's spoken in addition to the native language. And yeah, Rajlan is spoken here. You can see Durlani and Rajlan are competing for influence over this area. and Untitled is spoken in the territories in the south. Navalavan is spoken here, and Supretian spoken here, and then you can see where Donian and Goslin is spoken. And Harcraf is still kind of spoken, but only in this part of Harcraf. Most of Harcraf people just speak Durlani. Almost anyone who's educated will speak Durlani as a second language, because along with English, it's the official language of the Empire, since Durlanis are kind of like the dominant race in the Empire. There used to be like a whole social hierarchy, but that's kind of faded away. So yeah, that's basically the linguistic map. But you can see the most four common languages are Durlani, Rajlan, Navalavan, and Supretian. And that's because back in the ancient tribal days, those were the four most influential tribes. There were lots of tribes, but these four were the most influential, and they kind of had the most political power. And they each are kind of associated with different elements. So Rajlan is generally associated with fire. People from Rajlan are known to be like the most competitive and warlike, even though none of them actually go to war that much. They're the most like competitive and sometimes aggressive, but also the most proud. Navalavans are associated with water. They're the most easygoing and friendly, and they also kind of get picked on by the other ones. Supretians are associated with air, and they're known to be the smartest ones. They invented a whole system of math and astronomy. They're pretty cool. And Durlanis are associated with earth, probably because they farm so much. And they're known as like the most upper class and formal ones. They have the most sophisticated language and stuff. So these four tribes kind of ran the show for over 1,000 years. And yeah, now let's discuss more about them in the history segment. So Duralawn was the first tribe in the west. They formed because they had they were in the most fertile part of this river valley. So yeah, they were a farming tribe, and they got rich by selling crops to everyone. They got so rich that they expanded north, and they made the kingdom of Duralawn. But they expanded into some less fertile territories, and the people living there didn't really fit in because they weren't as good at farming. So they both gained independence into the Navalav tribe and the Komospesh tribe, and then Duralawn stopped being a kingdom. It was just a tribe again. So now there were three tribes. And then a fourth tribe formed, the Harcraf tribe. It formed around this lake, and they were sort of like a socialist tribe in that they would assign jobs to everyone at birth, but because it was so big, it got super disorganized, and it split apart into all these tribes. Harcraf is still there, but it's really small now. And yeah, there were all these four tribes, and they all kind of didn't like each other. They were all competing with each other. They never went to war, but all the tribes in the region kind of were very competitive and very resentful of each other. And it looked like they might be about to go to war, especially Duralawn and Rajlan. But then, the Montaigne tribe formed. And we've talked about them in the old Green Plateau series. They were in the mountains, and they couldn't farm as well because they were in the mountains. And they were made up of big cats like lions and tigers and leopards. So they demanded food from the other tribes, and since the other tribes had no weapons, they couldn't really fight against these fierce lions and stuff. So Komospesh was the first tribe to say no, and then Montaigne literally just killed them all. And then the rest of the tribes didn't want to say no after that. And because Montaigne posed such a danger, they stopped competing as much and became allies, but they still had friendly competition. And these four tribes founded the Olympics. Well, they didn't have this symbol. This is the symbol that we're borrowing. But they had sort of Olympic-like games. That way they could compete with each other without going to war, since they needed to be allies since Montaigne was such a threat. So yeah, a bunch of other tribes formed, but of course these four were still the most dominant ones. And yeah, the Distan Empire never actually conquered these, even though they tried to conquer this one, but they mostly just traded with these tribes. The western tribes taught Distan how to farm, since farming in the east was a lot less good. And eventually all the tribes were wiped out by King Ender and his mobs, except for Montaigne, because King Ender sort of allied with them. And eventually I, in the Green Plateau, defeated King Ender, so all that was left was Montaigne, but I didn't really know about them. So I discovered this lush valley where Duralawn was, and I made a colony there. I made Village 11. I had a bunch of villages, and this was just number 11. and it was a farming colony. I planted really cool crops there. I made my own farm, and I didn't know about Montaigne, but as soon as I started to explore there, I got some threats from Montaigne. That's a whole different story. And eventually, the Blue Plateau split off, so the Green Plateau had the north and the Blue Plateau had the south, but since Duralawn was such a desired place, Blue Plateau wanted to take it, and we fought not one, but three separate battles over Village 11. These are images actually from those battles from the episodes in the Green Plateau series. And eventually, after all three battles, the Blue Plateau took it over, and we were forced to flee the entire area. And eventually, when peace was signed and the territories turned into provinces, the Blue Plateau turned it into the province of Durlan, since the area where Village 11 was in the tribe of Durlan. So this is kind of how the tribe of Durlan sort of gained dominance over all the others, because the province was associated with them. So Durlan used to just refer to this little region, but now this whole region was called Durlan. So eventually the Green Plateau conquered everything, and Durlan was a province of the Green Plateau. And then there was the Titan War, where all this was Titan territory, and Durlan was the first province to get conquered by the Titans. And during that time, the Titans had a lot of time to influence Ex-Esquire, who was the governor of Durlan at the time. And, they took over Durlan by bombing the crap out of the capital city of Riverville with an army of 1,000 creepers. So yeah, the capital city's been destroyed and rebuilt many times. This is Ex-Esquire, who was at the battle. And yeah, even after we retook Durlan, at the very end of the Titan War, we discovered that Ex-Esquire, the governor, had betrayed the Green Plateau and sided with Kronos. He made a whole movie about it, explaining why. We're friends now, it's cool. But yeah, he did kind of betray the Green Plateau. And after I left and the new leader, Vaporizer, took over, this is Vaporizer, he put Ex-Esquire on trial for betraying the plateau and found him guilty, but Ex-Esquire fled to Durlan, and the people of Durlan sided with him instead of with the plateau, and Vaporizer wanted to invade Durlan, but the rest of the Green Plateau was like, guys, we don't want another war, just let them go. So they let Durlan gain independence into the Empire of Durlan, but once Vaporizer was voted out, he split away too, with the western provinces, which he liked better, and he made the Empire of Iapeta. So yeah, the Green Plateau was already starting to fall apart because the most powerful people were just going on and making their own empires. And eventually, the leader of the Green Plateau gave up this land and implied that it should belong to Durlan, but it wasn't really clear, and Iapeta thought they should have it since they had settlements in this land. So Duralawn and Iapeta went to war over this area, which is called Tridonia, and they fought many battles over this land. These are scenes from the movie where they sort of showed pictures from the war. And eventually the war drove Ex-Esquire insane, especially after they were losing, so he founded a radical Duralawn extremist terrorist group, which did bomb Iapetan cities, but also bombed random cities across the world, so obviously the whole world banded together against Ex-Esquire, and eventually his own empire, Duralawn, kicked him out, overthrew him, and sent him in jail in way over here. So yeah, eventually they made peace, and there were now 3 empires. Navaket kind of just negotiated its way out, and the Green Plateau still existed, but since all the most powerful people left, it eventually fell apart into all these other countries, and then this area was divided amongst these countries, so Duralawn got all this area. And yeah, so Duralawn had a lot of territory, and they were doing a lot of progress and development, including having really good trade at this major trading center. So yeah, Duralawn was economically prosperous, but one empress wanted more. Eventually, after Navaket fell, they saw it as a very good opportunity to seize even more power, since there was sort of a power vacuum here. So the Empress Funoa was a radical Duralawn nationalist, and she wanted to conquer more and more land to sort of have a monopoly over all the resources. So she was very nationalist, and she started building military bases, like this very important military base in Zidiotropolis. and she began training armies of animals, mostly Durlani animals, since she believed in sort of a racial hierarchy among the Durlani ethnicities. And yeah, then she initially declared war on just these three countries, with Sanoma as one of her allies. We talked about this in the Australis and Kenaya videos already. And yeah, this is a scene from when she initially started the war by invading this resource gathering base that belonged to Australis. And it went pretty well, but then these states started boycotting Duralawn because they didn't like how Duralawn was invading other countries. So Duralawn thought, okay, we'll invade these states too. So they invaded Cowlia, they also invaded Genesis, and they took on a lot of enemies. And they accused Genesis of siding with, or rather, they accused Iapeta of siding with Genesis, so that's why they declared war on Iapeta. Eventually, they took on two enemies. Even though Funoa's military was very strong, they couldn't take on all these enemies. So eventually, when it looked like they were losing, Funoa quit. And after their military city of Zidiotropolis was bombed, they had to surrender. And yes, so now Durlawn lost almost all of their territory. This was all that was left, and they entered a dark age for 50 years because they lost so much land. But then a new empress, there were two emperors between them, but then a new empress, Empress Buthony, rose to power, and at first she just wanted to help her country. But then she saved Durlawn from being destroyed by the Iapetan emperor, and it kind of got to her head, so she became a Durlawn nationalist too. But unlike Funoa, she was a lot smarter, and she wasn't fighting too many people at once. So instead, she took back sections of Iapeta one by one, spaced out, and for the past, 16 years, there's kind of been an on and off war with Iapeta. It's like this was taken in 8300, this was taken in 8308, 8310, 8312, and now they're kind of fighting over this region. And during that time, there was a massive arms race between Durlawn and Iapeta as they all raced to get the best weapons. Iapeta made bombers that could bomb Durlawn cities, so then Durlawn took over the Death Star, and then Iapeta built a brand new Star Destroyer to block blasts from the Death Star. So yeah, the rest of the world is very scared about all these weapons that keep getting produced. And now it's kind of, this region is being fought over. Iapeta technically occupies it, but Durlawn is still trying to take it. So yeah, we don't know what the future is going to hold, if peace is going to be approached soon, if Buthony is going to stop wanting more land. We don't know. So now let's go over the most notable sites to see in Durlawn. So there's, of course, the Great Farm in Riverville, the largest farm in this Minecraft world. There's the Great War Monument. That was the war where they lost all that territory. There's this other monument, which is from the time that Buthony saved the Empire. And these are the best restaurants in this Minecraft world, since Durlawn has the best food. And there's this giant trash can, which is a very interesting site. I've been there, it's awesome, just check it out. There's a giant statue of Ex Esquire, since he's the founder. There's this city of Bristow, which is made mostly of prismarine. I think that's cool. There's this airplane hotel that has really luxury suites. And there's this city in the Estherland territory called Gangstaville. It's an entire town dedicated to pink sheep. There's the flower fields of Montaigne City, where they keep all the bees and harvest honey. There's Morabito no Mora, a village that has a lot of villagers that can trade really awesome stuff. There's this elaborately shaped wheat farm in Rajlan, as well as a bunch of other smaller farms in Rajlan. They have these really cool designs. There's the Harcraf National Park, where you can see all these wonderful landforms. And in Harcraf, you can see the Titan War Monument from when Durlawn surrendered to the Titans. And, yeah, remember these 4 tribes? They've mostly moved on from their tribal lifestyle, but each one of them has one village that still clings on to the tribal lifestyle. So yeah, these are the 4 villages from each tribe. Yeah, they all have very traditional architecture, different than a lot of the modern buildings you see in Durlawn, and they're more isolated from the rest of the cities. And yeah, there's the space station, which we talked about. There's this circular crop field in the state of Kasamina, which is, most of the products from here are traded with other countries. And there's the city of Kasamina itself, which was actually built um, to show off to other countries since it's on a peninsula and everyone can see it. So yeah, those are the notable sites in Durlan. Each segment in this video takes longer than they usually do. So now the last segment, let's talk about who their friends are and who their enemies are. So obviously, Durlan's archenemy is Iapeta. They've fought 3 major wars with them, including the one that they're fighting right now. And yeah, Iapeta was literally founded because of how much Vaporizer hated Durlan. So yeah, they're kind of destined to always fight. Now, Durlan's allies are Kanaya and Claytonia. Kanaya gives them access to the Nether, and Claytonia buys weapons from them, so Claytonia kind of funds them. And I'm just gonna color all of Durlan's allies as this sort of yellowish green color. So yeah, obviously since they're allied with these countries, they're not allied with enemies of these countries, and the enemies of their allies are kind of friends with Iapeta. It's kind of like the enemy of my enemy's friend is my friend. So yeah, Jernaya and Tortamon are enemies of Claytonia. So obviously Iapeta's somewhat allied with them, and all of these countries are kind of suspicious of Claytonia, so they're kind of Durlan's enemies. And Winter is currently at war with Claytonia, so obviously they fall in the category of not allied with Durlan. I'm going to put all of Iapeta's friends as kind of this color, which is almost red, but not quite red. And Minlia and Thiro are good friends with Durlan since they buy crops from Durlan, and Durlan buys mining like ores and diamonds from them. And Hanakwa is also good friends with Claytonia, who's good friends with Durlan. So yeah, Hyperland it doesn't really like Hanakwa, so that means they don't like Durlan. And Cowlia and Australis also don't like Durlan more for economic reasons, since Durlan and Kanaya kind of made the price of gold worthless. We've talked about this. Genesis is a weird case, because Durlan thinks they're allied with Iapeta, but Iapeta thinks they're allied with Durlan, so we're just going to put them in the neutral category. And Durlan has a lot of friends and a lot of enemies, but their best friends would have to be Sanema. Sanema is a country that's way in the south here, but what they do is they rent out a region of Sanema called Provonia, and this is where Durlan kind of hides all their illegal weapons, because yeah, it's kind of like they own territory in another country. So yeah, Sanema, they just pay off the Saneman elites to let them run this area, Provonia. And yeah, Sanema's their best friend, except for there are some southern rebels that are sponsored by Iapeta, but they haven't been able to accomplish much. So yeah, now here is X Esquire to talk about Provonia, which he is the governor of.
I am the governor of Provonia, the, in my personal opinion, most beautiful province in all of the plateau world. It is used for the development, sorry, um, of the most powerful weapons in all of the world. It has everything from cannons that shoot for miles to uh, swords that turn sheep into lobsters and flowers that do more damage than the most powerful fences that we have. It is the probably the most odd looking province because of all of the modded uh, blocks that used to be here and all of the tests that we have done here. But the people who live here are very nice, and even though there are not that many of them, they are still probably some of my favorite people. And even though they have so many illegal areas in here that I totally should not allow, but do anyway because it's very cool. It's just one of my favorite things that I've been a part of, and I am very happy of what I've done here and am excited to continue to work on it.
Bonus, Duralawn also owns this Death Star, which is 150,000 blocks above the overworld, and it has a lot of stuff that were totally obtained in survival. So, Esquire, what do you think about this Death Star? What do you like about it?
Well, we have a giant laser cannon that can blow up pretty much everything that we want it to, but don't worry, because we probably won't use it, but it's kind of just there just in case, you know? I mean, just a little bit of the power always, comes in handy sometimes.
Okay, that's good to know. So, guys, in conclusion, Durlan is one of the most powerful empires, one of the two most powerful, and yeah, they never fail to surprise me with what they're doing. I'll put it that way. Stay tuned. Genesis is coming up next.